So, brief introduction. So, Alex Cowan has been working with us for quite a while now. We were fortunate enough to have him do a lightning talk last month. And he's also done an MVP workshop with our friends down in San Jose, at the San Jose group, which is a really great way for everybody to get detailed feedback on their product as opposed to more general theoretical knowledge. So I'm really happy to have him here. He's one of the few people, I know a lot of people who decide to start consulting companies and then say, we're going to do our consulting company, but then we're going to actually build products. But a lot of them get so caught up in the consulting that they never manage to make the jump to products. So Alex is one of the people who has actually succeeded doing that and is doing some absurd amount of transactions with telecom companies.
Absolutely.
5 of the big telecom companies in the world. Yeah, we'll just leave it as unbelievably huge, right?
Yep. I like that. Thank you.
Unbelievably huge is a good number. So please give a warm welcome to Alex Cowan.
Thanks for having me. How many of you are doing consulting now? Okay, wow. Most of you. Good, we've got the right audience here. So, my name's Alex Cowan. I am the author of a book called Starting a Tech Business, and I'm the founder and CTO of Leonid Systems. Leonid is an enterprise software company. Our customers are communications service providers, hosted communications service providers. So these are phone companies, cable companies, across the world. We work with about 60 of these folks now, and they did an absurd $350 billion in revenue last year. Their victory, not ours, but we're very happy to be their partner. Leonid started in 2007. I was out on my own, I needed a job, so I started Leonid, and Leonid started doing consulting. I personally, I love consulting. Don't you? How many of you like doing consulting? Okay. About 2/3 of you. Good. Well, I liked it a lot. I love it because it pays the bills. Leonid has never ever received any outside funding, so this was a necessity for us. And consulting is relatively easy to scale. You find the right kind of deals, the right kind of talent. You repeat. It scales in a relatively linear way, which is a great way to get a business to critical mass. And as if that wasn't enough, it turns out that consultants have a lot of the right skill sets to do customer development. They're trained to go in and do customer engagement and talk to people. They're trained to go in and learn, discover things. They're trained to think about creative solutions to those things and then go pitch those and sell them and validate them, which are very important to customer development and some of the rare skill sets that at least in the startups that I work with, we never quite find as much as we would like. So I wanted to scale the business beyond just trading time for money, as Spike Morelli once put it, who's a Lean startup member here. And so we moved to what I would call productized consulting. And what I mean by that is we had a set of repeatable, standardized products that we generally sold on a fixed price basis. And this is even better than consulting because, number one, it's much easier to sell. You're selling a known proposition to a known type of customer. It is easier to scale up and it's easier to staff. Staffing and execution, of course, is your major cost driver and cost component around any consulting business. The reason it's easier to do that is that element of repeatability, and then also if you're repeating something, you should have some intellectual property multipliers behind these engagements that you're doing. And then finally, it's easier to manage the whole thing because, again, of that element of repeatability. And that's particularly important if you're going to use the productized consulting as a springboard to something else, which is what we did at Leonid. We took the things that we learned with our customers and the additional financial headroom that the productized consulting gave us, and we started to do product development. Now, this may sound like a lot of work in discovery and whatnot. I would say, how many of you are familiar with the 4 steps to the epiphany? How many of you read the whole book? Wow, a lot. Very studious crowd. The most of the discovery and validation work we did with our customers was in these early phases when we were in the consulting business. And this may sound like a lot of work because we even had to do sort of mini discovery and validation loops for each of our additional products, always iterating through basically a build, measure, learn loop. But I think that It wasn't, because A, it allowed us to do what we wanted to do without going out and getting outside funding, which we didn't want to do, and B, a lot of software is built without enough customer discovery, particularly in the B2B enterprise software space. And guess what? An appalling number of enterprise software implementations fail, 50 to 70%. It's amazing. It's a staggering number. And our numbers at Lean are way, way better than that. And I attribute that mostly to the amount of discovery that we went out and did. Good question.
Are you saying 50 to 70% of people build a product and no one buys it, or that they build a product?
They build a product, or somebody implements a product in an enterprise, and when Gartner goes and calls them and says, did the engagement meet your expectations? Did you accomplish what you wanted to accomplish? They say, no, it didn't. That's what it is. It's a good question. Sorry. I don't get to get down to all these details. It's the way I would like. Yes?
I can just throw in. I used to manage customer support centers. Every single customer support center system that I ever saw was 86 within 2 or 3 years to do something else because people were so frustrated with it. So that's what you're talking about here.
Yes. So the first thing that we went after at Lean was actually work around the integration of VoIP subsystems. So we're a little outside of this IT domain. The reason we did that was we knew about this topic. It was what I'd been doing in my last job. And around 2007 was when Lean had started. There was a lot of transition from these legacy telephony systems to voice over IP, which meant a lot of flux and turmoil and change for a lot of operators as they implemented these new internet IETF-based technologies. And the rub was the systems that these things were replacing had been in place for decades, so even a very well-trained, qualified, smart engineer would have to manage like 3,000 to 5,000 pages of documentation to be able to go do this. So that was very, very onerous and difficult. So we would go through, punch through these systems, make sure they were working properly, teach everybody about best practices, and then we deliver a document that was like 200 pages that would allow them to understand the system fundamentals and basically something you could hand to a new engineer on this network and say, look, this is what we have, this is how it works. If you want to change anything, understand these fundamentals and document it in this way. So that was great. It saved our customers a lot of wasted time and money, and we drove to a consulting product that we called Network Principles of Operation. It's performed really well for us. This particular opportunity did not present anything product-wise that we thought was really interesting or good fit for Lean. But what I do think is notable about this is that there's a lot of segments today that are in the same situation where there's a lot of disruption, a lot of change, a lot of flux. Best practices are emerging. There's a lot of topics around mobile, reactive design, probably configuration management using tools like Puppet and Chef to do application management in data centers is such an area. So I think if you look out for opportunities like this and you have the right skill set, I think you'll find quite a lot of them, and that's a great beachhead for any new business that you want to grow and scale up and use as a base to do something.
So that's specifically because there's confusion. It's a good.
Yeah, I mean, if customers know how to do something, they don't really need consultants. Maybe they need temporary staffing help, but they need somebody to come in who's like, hey, there's no obvious recipes for doing this stuff. We've done it a dozen times though. We can come in and help you learn the easy way, not the hard way. That's really the kind of thing that I'm looking for to replicate this pattern here. So we would always, as we were in these places, we made sure we did a good job. We always asked our customers, what else is on your A list? And we learned a lot that there were problems around order management and services provisioning. It was taking too long, there were lots of errors, just a kind of a big drag. And really that was because in the services that a lot of our customers have been selling, they were relatively simple. Bit rate, a number of phone lines, kind of oversimplifying here. But when they started selling hosted applications like enterprise telephony, cloud enterprise telephony, there's literally probably 2 orders of magnitude increase in the number of hooks and dials and parameters that everybody had to wrestle in and manage and get under control. So the first problem scenario we went after was with the network operations folks that we had been working with. And they said, hey, why don't you come in and, if you want, write some text processing scripts to take this order data, validate it, and just provision a bunch of stuff on these various VoIP subsystems. Because right now it takes somebody like 3 hours to do this, and it's just begging to be automated. So why don't you do that? So we did it. It's easy. It took the initial version took a week or two to MVP and go and give to the customer and have them try out, and that was great. But our audience was very limited. What these operators really wanted was a tool that their services provisioning folks could use, because the engineers were needed on other things and they were expensive and so forth. So this kind of needed a GUI, more of an application experience. So we MVP'd that, we iterated through it a few times, and this was really much more difficult. You know, building application software, understanding that audience, you know, that was what was really hard, but it was very worthwhile because this is when this thing started to become a really substantial product. Then the next problem scenario we ran into was the operator said, you know, the last thing I need, the IT department needs is another stray IT system. So we need to understand how does this fit in with our big picture. So we concepted an API that would make sense for their upstream systems to use, and we MVP'd that, put it out there, and you know, after a couple iterations, that started working well. And one of the notable things I wanted to call out here was that we really took a lot of time to understand all the different parts of these organizations they were working with, even if they weren't all buyers, because they all mattered a lot, and they all were very influential in allowing us to get to the quality footprint and the amount of interaction and involvement that we have with this software today. And
so
I'll talk
the products that you're selling, those two MVPs.
This became a product that we now call low-key provisioning, all this stuff here.
At this point, we started to get a lot of questions about service quality. How do we make it better? How do we know that it's getting better? We know how to operate this network, provision it. Now we need to make sure the service is really great for our customers. And this is where the practice of design thinking really comes into play.
And customer discovery are really sort of a subset of this body of work around design thinking, which is basically about creating an empathy for the customer and then applying creative solutions against that empathy. So the design thinker at some point went in and understood that the seamstress needs a better cutting tool, and they engineered the sewing center. It's kind of a simple, cutesy example, but it's actually a pretty good one. It's very, good fit. So the interesting thing about design thinking is that it's trending. Everybody likes it. It's very popular. So if it's so obvious and so terrific and so self-evident, why are there all these books and blogs and talks and workshops and things? And I think that one of the main reasons is we're kind of wired from way back when to try to compel other people to our ideas and our actions, and it's just sort of the way people are wired. Design thinking is a little bit of a new thing in human nature, or you have to sort of swim upstream a little bit in that regard. Even around the turn of the last century, Henry Ford says, if I asked customers what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse. And how many of you were here for the dot-com period? Oh, not very many of you. Well, back then, product design was kind of pretty much the same. It was a lot of like, we're going to build this thing, people don't get it. They didn't get it, nobody bought it. It was a lot of this sort of crash and burn without, because people didn't go out, they didn't develop this empathy, they didn't really think about the user very much. They just wanted to go have people love their solution. So now you have this practice of design thinking, a lot more talk about UX, and this stuff is practiced by companies that the public admires and wants to emulate, so all this is very good. And the even better news is that there are very ready tools that anybody can pick up and start using to do this stuff. You're probably familiar with some of them. The first one is personas. These are just very vivid depictions of your buyer and your user. So you make sure you can describe these people, and then you make sure you can describe problem scenarios they have. So when people go camping today, they don't know how to go to the bathroom. Is that really true? You have to, go find that out. And for example, and then we follow through from those to user stories. So user stories are, part of the agile development methodology, and this is a developer consumable statement about something you think that the user wants to do with your product to address one of their problem scenarios. So these are the tools we use at Leonid, at least, and it makes practicing design thinking something that you don't have to have cool glasses or a Vespa or a Mac or anything like that to do this stuff. It's very accessible. Anyone can do it. It's really quite easy. I'm going to give you a couple of examples. The hardest thing that I find with creating these personas is just having people get started. That's with startups that I mentor or the staff at Leonid. And the first thing you usually want to do with a persona is just be able to describe these people in a very vivid, non-arbitrary way. And one litmus test I always ask, and I'll kind of give it to you before the fact, usually ask people when they come talk to me afterwards, is what kind of shoes does your persona wear? Do you have that in mind? If you know right away, then good. You have a good, vivid depiction of this person. And then beyond that, a really good checklist, certainly not the only way to do this, but a good checklist is what does this persona think, see, feel, and do with regard to your particular area of interest. By the way, I love it when you guys take photos of these slides. It makes me feel terrific. But I'm going to put them all on SlideShare, and we'll post the footage. Yeah, but feel free. So this is a good kind of checklist for creating personas. And I'll show you guys some templates for doing this. The other thing I like to do, it's a little campy, but I always like to give the personas a first name, like Mary the mom, Andrew the accountant. And it can feel a little silly to do this, but it keeps the personas from becoming arbitrary and disembodied, which, I've done this. Everybody I've ever seen write a persona struggles with this a little bit. They start just saying, yeah, well, so obviously this person is this, and they do that. And they stop thinking about a real person. They just start thinking instead of kind of implicit assumptions that they have, which is not what you want to do with this. You want to have a real live person in mind, or that wants to stoke your desire to go out and meet that real life person and go learn about them. So, most of you should have index cards. If you'll take 3 minutes, write down 3 personas that pertain to what you're doing. We'll take 3 minutes. I will count down the minutes for you. If you can't find pens, there's some here. If you raise your hand, I'll bring one to you. Write down 3 personas that have to do with what you're working on. Anybody else need a pen? Take fast. Pen?
I want my Sharpies back.
Three or more. You can write as many as you want. More is more in this situation. Two minutes left.
If you don't write anything down, we'll force you to drink all the PBR.
Where's Dave?
Could be worse.
No, if it helps you think of a real person, go ahead, that's fine. One minute left.
So we're trying to capture the whole variety?
Yep. Yep. For now, just write down as many as you can think of. No, just write down their name. And if you think of any things around the empathy map, feel free to make a note of it. But the goal is just to get 3 of them written down as names. No, keep doing what you're doing. That's good. Yeah. Okay, time. Now, as a special treat, we have a real live member of the Lean Startup Circle who's going to tell you about how personas have helped him and his company focus what they're doing and accelerate their time to market. This is Jacob Esparza.
Hi. All right, so I'm Jake Esparza, said CEO and founder of Making Friends. We're a startup here in San Francisco, and we're developing an iPad app for teaching social skills to children with autism spectrum disorder. And so we use customer personas to identify our community and for better understanding product marketing and sales. And while using these personas, we've identified 5 main ones that really helped us. They're the child that's using the app, the parent of the child, the teacher, the researcher involved, and the behavioral therapist. And so while developing these personas, we identified 2 problem scenarios. One is content creation. So this is like the limiting factor for most educational apps companies out there. The second one is individualized learning. And this has to do with what we learned from the market is there's a wide range of individuals that are diagnosed with autism. And with that diagnosis comes a wide range of skill and behavioral deficits. And so it's up to us to figure out what, who we want to target for our product. And just having these personas and helping us guide through these conversations has really just been helpful for us to focus.
Thanks.
Yep.
So I'll be around too. Thank you. So I'll be available to talk to you more about what you wrote down if you have questions afterwards. So as we went out and did these service design engagements with our customers, we created a set of personas for them, looking at actual people that were using these types of systems. These are an example of a few of them. So again, these are about offices that use enterprise telephony. So these are our customers' customers. And at the same time, we had actual enterprise personas. So these are buyers and users of our product. And in case you doubt that these are real flesh and blood people, one of these personas, in fact, this man right here is among you tonight. He's a real flesh and blood lean-in customer. We're going to play a game where you try to find him after.
Is he still wearing the blue shirt?
No, that was not. I guess he is. I mean, I'm not sure it's the same shirt. But so the nice thing about this persona problem scenario driven product design was that it actually started helping our customers inadvertently resolve a lot of problems with their whole service delivery chain. So it turned out that the lack of a really good, descriptive, empathic product design was kind of breaking things all the way down the delivery process for these products. And having these more design thinking driven, persona driven product designs actually started automatically kind of helping the business perform better, spend less money, make more money, and it created even a lot of further opportunities for improvement beyond that. So it worked out really well. We validated this. We drove to a consulting product that we call service design, which we do all the time, and it's really successful for us and our customers. Yes?
Did you find that understanding your customers' customers was also really important to you being able to sell to your customers?
Absolutely.
Well, I mean, because you're getting inside the problems that they're trying to solve, right?
Yeah. It was very important. It was very beneficial for us. We have absolutely piggybacked. So one thing we found, though, as we were doing this, and this is, I think, another example of the kind of discovery you'll get with this sort of deep engagement, was that web enterprise telephony system, the idea is that, you know, instead of dealing with this weird phone interface, they can go onto this great modern portal and manage their phone system in their office just like they buy airplane tickets or, you know, watch Netflix or whatever. You know, it just seems reasonable enough. So it turned out that the products that were out there weren't really very good. So the first thing that we worked on was building a product that we called Loki Portals. And basically, our initial problem scenario was just getting a portal out the door that dovetailed with the customer's product design, that was consistent with their brand identity and the rest of their visual program, and just, you know, generally operationally made sense for them. So we built Loki Portals with a template-driven front end.
And we used a single sign-on technology called SAML. Once we got the portal out the door with our customers, the thing was to actually have it have an impact on the business. And that meant driving customer satisfaction up and driving tickets down. And this was hung on a couple of key assumptions. One was that end users wanted to log in and do self-care. And the second one was that a course UX goal of getting the number of clicks a user had to execute to get to what they wanted from 4 to 6 down to 2 to 3, that in general that was sufficient to make the experience worthwhile for them, that they would go through and do what the operator expected them to do. Turned out both of these were wrong. We found out that it was really the customer admin that was going to be going in and doing those things. So that's the business owner at a really small business like a dry cleaner. It's the office manager at a somewhat bigger business, and the IT person at a business bigger than that. And then we found out that really we needed to focus on the customer admin experience. So we MVP'd a new front end, and that helped a little bit. It reduced navigational depth, it reduced the amount of context switching, but it really wasn't getting the numbers where we wanted them to be. So we found that, okay, the office manager is just still, this customer admin still is not getting it, and we created a couple new assumptions. We said, okay, well, we need to make it explicit that we believe that customer admins want to do this stuff at all, and we still need to prove that, and that if we just get everything that they want on a single page, that'll be good enough. So we MVP'd a new page called the dashboards, which you see here, and it got all the major entities that the customer admin wanted to deal with, basically the end users, their phones and so forth, all of that on a single page. And at this point, that started to really drive the numbers up towards where we wanted them to be. We were trucking along with low-key portals, but then we started to hear about another problem scenario, that receptionists and other power users wanted to have a better out-of-the-box experience, which meant that the product manager at the operator needed to be able to tweak these out-of-the-box experiences more readily, and they wanted to be able to change the display on their phone. So we MVP'd a product that we call Visual Device Management. From a design standpoint, this is how it breaks down in terms of a persona, a problem scenario, and a set of user stories. And then from a lean startup standpoint, the assumptions broke down like this. First, that do we really believe customers want to go do this? Fortunately, our partner had already MVP'd and, well, really prototyped a version of this that they found there was a huge amount of end user demand, of operator interest. So we're pretty lucky in that we really didn't have to validate that fundamental demand hypothesis. Then we needed to make sure that giving the capability to this end user would solve more problems, in that it wouldn't create problems. That, for instance, the end user wouldn't find this confusing and call up support and be frustrated, rather than it helps them do what they want to do. And we did some end user testing, and then to really validate this at scale, we needed to do beta with our customers. The one level up, we needed to make sure the design and the architecture were something that we could support. There was a lot of new plumbing, and could we support our customers without breaking our economic model? We needed to make sure we could make money, and then you can see other things here that were really about just fine-tuning the product design. Notice that these last couple are priority 2, meaning non-existential. This is what it looks like with a Polycom office phone, and it essentially worked. We were able to validate our core hypotheses, and users are out there using this to manage their phones. And so not only did it solve some problems for end users, but it got the device configuration away from these funky local LCD interfaces that were hard for users to use and extremely difficult for the cloud operators to troubleshoot, because these were local configs trying to be managed on a cloud business model. In the back end, we're actually able to migrate the configs up to the cloud, which was a sort of back end side benefit to the overall operational goings on at our operator. At this point in the talk, we're going to take 3 minutes, and everyone please write down at least 3 key assumptions about your business, and we'll discuss these at the end. The last case study we'll look at is we started getting a lot of questions about, okay, we know how to operate this, provision it, and we have a competitive product. How do we make the business more efficient? And we engaged in a series of consulting activities around this that we ultimately drove to Productized consulting products. And the first one was audit. So we would work with our customers, create a process inventory, and actually gather quantitative measurements of how long a process would take and how that time was spent. And this was great because it gave us a way to get quantitative and qualitative validation of what was working and what didn't, and get feedback from our customers. Then we moved on to actually designing processes, starting from new business units and things like that. How would we operate a process? This was great because it also provided user stories into a business layer product that we started to design. And you might ask, why did you run off and build a product? Which is a good question. And really the reason was, as we were driving to this consulting product, we found that our operators could not implement the recommendations we were making because their IT systems weren't suited to it. They were too archaic or just not robust enough. That was really the core assumption behind why we built the product that we now call Logi BPM. We also found that the operators often had, for reasons of having so many different products and audiences over the years, different systems for different products that were sold, different channels of the products that were sold through. And so we had built Logi BPM as a series of apps on Sugar CRM and Salesforce, and it turned out that one side benefit of centralizing accounts and order management and so forth on a CRM was to make it much easier to have a central nexus for the customer, so that if they're sold through channel A versus channel B, if they buy this versus they buy that, they're treated and they're organized in the same way. This was really important because many operators are moving towards scope-based businesses where they're working to sell the customer many different products. Another related example is difficulties in spinning up e-commerce. We helped them focus on billing and order capture, and that allowed us to really ramp that activity up. I have 6 summary tips if you are running a consulting business and you're looking to use it as a springboard to create product. First, just find consulting that people will pay you for. That's the best way to start driving towards a product market fit. Second, drive towards standardization once you feel comfortable. Test the ability to bring in different people to do these engagements with appropriate training, to generally be able to scale these things, write templates, write operating manuals on how to execute them. Third, focus on selling similar customers. So balance the business that walks in the door with the business that you really want to drive this standardized consulting product. Now, I am not going to make a brash statement like turn away all other business, because I don't want anybody to end up on the street, but I think that it's important to balance these things, because if you drive towards a productized consulting business, it'll have a number of positive effects on your economics. One, your stuff is going to be a lot easier to sell. You'll have a tighter proposition, makes it easier to use indirect sales channels. It's easier for, presumably if you're growing, you're being successful, your clients like what you're doing, and you're going to be able to upsell a lot easier if your stuff is standardized, because it's easier for them to see what's on the menu. They're not as reticent to ask and go in the whole big sales cycle. You in the flip side, are going to have a lot easier time selling, because consultative selling of this type is very expensive. You're going to have simplified contracting, and probably the single most important thing, your cost of delivery is going to go down, because you know what talent you need and you're able to have some intellectual property multipliers behind these consulting products. And finally, engagement management overhead will go down, and that's great, especially if you're going to use this as a springboard to build product, for instance. And if you're going to build product, focus on expanding your consulting portfolio. You're going to find things that either you just don't know how to do, or they're not in your area of focus. Certainly we did at Lean It, at least. And you want to find qualified partners that customers like and expand those relationships to make your firm bigger than it really is. And side note, I recommend avoiding commissions and contracts and finder's fees and stuff at the beginning, mainly because just you don't want to kill these things with complexity before you get a chance to try them out. Next, become a domain expert. If you can't do a concierge, a hand-holding model of everything your customer is going to do with your product, then at least in this model, it's probably still time to be doing the consulting, to be learning about the customer. And finally, go there. Build once you see the opening. If you're not sure, again, under this circumstance, I would say, Wayne, you're probably, you know, if you know the customer this well and you do see a product opportunity, it's probably, not always, but it's probably going to be pretty obvious, and it's probably going to be calling to you pretty strongly. There are a number of resources on alexandercowan.com for doing all this stuff: personas, positioning statements, assumptions. It's the first row there where you see /resources. My contact information is here. Please feel free to get in touch with me if you have a question about your business. Thanks. Take care. We'll take questions now.
Do you want to do some more questions, or?
I would love to do some. We already had a nice group of questions already. I have one question immediately, which is staffing. So when you were, tell us a little bit about who was in the company initially, and did you have any issues with people who were just like, no, I like consulting. Like, consulting tends to have a very high turnover rate of people like getting paid a certain amount of money in one consulting company, hopping over to another consulting company for an extra 10%. Mm-hmm. How did you deal with finding people who really wanted to productize what they're doing?
That's a good question. Well, the number one answer is that the first set of people we hired were people that I'd worked with in another job, and I knew them well, and they were just, you know, there's a level of engagement because we worked, I've been their boss at another job or something, so they were just sort of, we had such a long history of working together, it was a better deal for them to stay and see what happened with Lean and to go somewhere else, I guess. And then we paid them a lot. You know, we were making money, so unlike a lot of startups, you know, we didn't have to like ask these people to work for nothing. You know, so we were able to pay a very competitive package to these people. They make more money than me in a lot of cases.
Other questions?
Landon.
Did you have any kind of conflicts between like consulting skills and engineering skills? Or?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. You know, the biggest, I would say, you know, I don't run the company anymore. We have a CEO who's great, and a guy who runs engineering who's great. The person who runs accounts is really good. But I think the biggest challenge we still have is getting that information. You know, we have a much bigger product development organization. We had contractors initially, and then, you know, it grew very big, obviously, as we expanded the product line. And I think one of the biggest management challenges we have now is, you know, getting those outtakes from the consultant into the developers and giving them a vivid picture of what's going on. And it really is those design thinking tools that help us do that. We have a set of personas that are up on Google Docs. We always require user stories, even if it's kind of a very nitty-gritty, you know, kind of workflow, technical sort of thing that we're doing. We still require a user story, you know. So do we have challenges? Absolutely. It's really hard to do well. I mean, it's just something you just have to pay constant attention to. Yes?
Do you find that,
sorry.
Okay. Sorry. Do you find that when you're trying to go in and sell that the user stories and things are difficult to sell people on, or do you find that it's an advantage over competitors that might be just selling against a feature checklist?
It's an advantage because we have the proof points on the market. I mean, we're the most widely distributed IT solution in this space, and we're very thankful to our customers for that. So I think, you know, in the early days, I will tell you, selling the service design engagement was very hard because, you know, the design thinking just wasn't as ubiquitous as it is now, number one, and two, it just wasn't as ubiquitous in the industry. So it took, why do you want to go talk? We did get questions. Why do you want to go talk to the customers? But, you know, we explained to them, we showed them the stuff we'd already built. We did do some of our own independent end user customer interviews, and we showed them, you know, what we learned from those things. And so we showed them. You have to show them. You know, you can't be like, you should do design thinking because, you know, IDEO says it's good and they write about it in Fast Company. That doesn't work. You know, people won't believe. They don't believe me. We showed them what we showed them.
And you were in your 6 steps there area. How many people were you? Is that?
Sorry, 6 tips. Those are the 6 tips.
6 tips, right?
Those are heresy.
But they're sort of in order, right?
Yeah, yes they are.
Just, you know, were you sort of one guy often, you know?
Yeah.
How many people were you at the very beginning?
Just one. It was just me.
When did you become 2? Like at which step?
Yeah, 2007. Oh, when did we become 2 at this point? Here. So by 2008, we were 8 people, and we had 3. We were sort of here on 3 of these consulting projects. product. So about a year and a half in, we had 8 people, and we had 3 of these productized consulting things that we were out doing.
Just a side point about that, I will say that I found myself in a position trying to do those things inside an existing consulting company, and I think it is actually substantially easier to start this way than to remove rigor mortis and take an existing consulting company and introduce this concept.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't exactly start saying we're going to build consulting, we're going to build products. We definitely knew we wanted to build consulting products. We didn't necessarily know that we wanted to build products, software products at the beginning. But yeah, I'm sure it's hard to change anything in an existing organization, I think. Yes?
What have you learned from the competitors? And what are the names of some?
Amdocs is like a big, huge UK company. They're kind of the big, we don't, I'm on camera, I'm not going to say anything bad. We have outcompeted them successfully. Yeah, you can ask some real operators who are here. So they're and then there's like a company, for example, there's a company called Sigma Systems. I think they were public for a while in Canada. And I think that I ran professional services, the professional service business at a company that was selling to the same customer base. They're actually our exclusive reseller now of our products. So I could do a whole talk about how we use the channel, but not to digress, but how do we compete with those guys? Because we cared and we didn't try to cram too much software down their throat. I think a lot of, won't name any specific company, but the classical approach, I think it's true of a lot of enterprise packages, is like, okay, our design strategy is to be like a tumor. We're going to force our way in there, be as big as we possibly can, force out all the other stuff, because you kind of, if they said they just wanted a steering wheel, not to mix metaphors, but if they said they just want a steering wheel, we're like, no, you got to get the whole car, or forget it, And we didn't do that. We did this stuff in a very modular fashion, so those were good entry points for us on the product side. And our customers appreciated that because this was the recession, right, still, and they didn't have a ton of money to spend, and they needed acute, measurable solutions to very specific problems, and we did that for them. And I knew if we did product that we wanted to do that from my last job, because I was kind of the interface to a lot of the companies, and I was like, my God, this stuff is so bad.
So when were you able to look at your competitors and say, you know what, I don't need to validate this assumption because my competitors have? And when were you able to look at your competitors and say like, uh-oh, we should validate that?
We learned, everything we learned from our competitors, we learned by counterexample. And that sounds kind of glib and arrogant, but in this particular space, I have to, at least everything that I learned, that was the case. I honestly really didn't see a single thing that I wanted to emulate. So I don't think that's usually the case, honestly. And we do look at stuff, but
it's kind of the definition of business opportunity, though, isn't it?
Yeah. But and then
screwed up.
What was the second part of the question, Tristan?
You just
what were the things that we wanted to validate? Everything. And even things that we didn't think we needed to validate, we were like, as a kind of an afterthought, maybe we should just double check. We learned something. And that's that's the lean startup stuff really at work.
Who has an assumption that they wrote down right now that they'd like to share? It's very dangerous. No, it's not. Gimme. Who wrote down a persona that they'd like to share? Jacob? Jacob, by the way, just so you all know, is also a volunteer at Lean Startup Circle. He always manages to walk in right when we're carrying something really heavy, and he's awesome.
All right, so Rachel, the mom, she's thinking there must be an app out there for teaching social skills to my child with autism. She sees a lot of, hold on, I'm trying to read my own writing. Sees a lot of apps out in the market, tries them, and gets discouraged by that thing, by just not getting back on these apps. She feels frustrated by all the noise in the market of, hey, look at this app, and it doesn't do anything. What she's doing is reading blogs, Twitter, and talking to her network of other moms to find out the latest on autism.
And then from an assumption standpoint, can I talk about the ones?
Yeah.
So I think Jacob's company has an app for autistic children that you know, really, the only thing they really need to prove is that kids will actually engage with this, because, you know, parents are so, like, you know, kind of as Jacob alluded to in his persona, they're so eager for something and they're spending so much money on therapy that if they can just validate that an application gets engagement with these children, they, you know, they can sell it all they want. And that's, you know, that has really focused your activity, if I'm not mistaken.
That's the challenge. Yeah.
Did you use those assumptions for marketing?
Yeah. I mean, we're definitely testing. Like with the teachers, it's implement in 2 minutes for them. So learning that they don't want to do behavioral therapy because it's too hard to get started. So yeah.
Now, I would encourage everyone to talk to Jacob. I mean, I hope it's okay if I should. His company has all this stuff up on Google Docs. They really actually write these things down and focus on them. They're a small company without a lot of resources, like so many companies.
7 people. Limited time on.
Last question?
What's the company called?
Making friends.
Good, excellent question. There's your pin. So we do still have I think we have 4 copies of the book left. So if you haven't okay, so come up. And if you'd like more beer, we have more beer. So let's give a big round of applause. And let's also give a big round of applause for Darius Dunlap, John, and all the volunteers. Can all the volunteers stand up and raise your hand? Because we usually have a ton here. Where are they? So thank you guys very much. We really appreciate it. So please drink my remaining beer, and even if it's PBR, and if it's not good enough, I will get you a Guinness.